Hi everybody, I'm Andy Knode, and 25 years ago today, the episode On Leather Wings of Batman the Animated Series premiered. September 6th, 1992. If you've spent any time looking at Batman the Animated Series, you probably know that this was the first episode to ever be produced, but was the second episode to air.
This is Gotham Air 1 reporting in. Things are actually quiet for once.
So, real quick, our 30-second recap of the episode is there is a new creature flying around Gotham, and the police and everybody thinks that it's Batman that's terrorizing, but Batman obviously knows it's not him, so he is on a detective mystery mission to find out who it is. So he takes a sample of the hair to some doctor friends of his that are and under the ruse of Bruce Wayne that these are bats in his attic, and through that and through the screeching recordings that he finds, he figures out who he thinks it is, but it turns out to be the son of the doctor, and then they go on this rampage through the city, and they are eventually, Batman comes out victorious. Now, I watched this episode with the commentary. On the DVD, they have a audio commentary version of this episode with Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski. So I got a lot of the behind-the-scenes production thing, and it was really kind of fascinating to watch and listen to them kind of reliving this episode that's obviously very special to them, being the first one that they produced. And something that they talked a lot about that is very notable in this episode is how dark it is. And I don't just mean in tone and mood, but in just the physical look of this episode. Even compared to yesterday's episode, The Cat and the Claw, it is very dark. The whole thing, I think, with the exception of maybe a scene, all takes place at night. Even though they were working off of the palettes of colors from Tiny Toons, they were able to pick some of the darkest colors and used a very limited palette, which gives it that very vintage, old look. They were striving for really making it look and feel like the old Max Fletcher Superman cartoons. And I think they captured it really well. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about this episode is that darker vintage look. Now, this episode, for one reason or another, I feel like I saw this a lot. I feel like it came up rather frequently, and probably because it was so early on that it came up in the rotation a lot more, what seemed like a lot more frequently. You know, when they only have 5 or 6 episodes that are released and they go on break, then you're seeing those episodes even more. So I feel like I saw it a lot, and I think when I was younger, it was one of those that when it would come on, I kind of roll my eyes and go, oh, this one again. And I think really just because one of the things I always loved about Batman that I think is true for a lot of people was the rogues gallery, the villains. And ManBat is not a iconic villain, although he first appeared in the comics, I think in the 70s. Correct me if I'm wrong.
And what if they are bats, Mr. Wayne? What then? Destroy them like insects? We won't survive the next evolutionary cataclysm, but bats will.
And the other thing, too, is that in this episode very much highlights Batman as a detective.
I would say, sir, that we have ourselves an incongruity.
Incongruity, Alfred? He's lying, and I'm gonna find out why.
Which I think sometimes in the later iterations of Batman kind of is breezed by. You know, he's considered in the comic books the world's greatest detective. And I think that we don't showcase that enough. Current news, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, that's going to be coming out in a couple of years. Matt Reeves has said that he is going to focus on the detective aspect of Batman and do it in more of a film noir style, which, if that happens, I'd be very excited about it. Anyway, back to the animated series. The other thing that you notice in this episode, they were able to get away with a little bit of a darker mood and maybe a little bit more quote-unquote violence in that. You do see Batman bleed for one of the first times, and I think one of the only times in the series. on the music score, they had a full orchestra at their disposal for the production of these shows, which again just adds to this cinematic kind of classic film feel to it. And it feels so much bigger than it is. I mean, it really feels like a mini movie. And again, like I mentioned yesterday, there's some neat little elements that they go above and beyond that they didn't need to do. And one shot in this episode that was pointed out by Bruce Timm, when ManBat and Batman are at the climactic battle at the end, fly by the police blimp, which in itself, the police blimp is very cool on my list. The animation of that with the blimp flying towards them and the camera following them as they fly over, way above and beyond what they had to do. It could have just been a stationary shot of the blimp and ManBat and Batman flying over.
I'm getting something strange.
Ah, not again.
I'm serious. It's right below us. Whoa!
Some of the notable elements of this episode is, again, the black and white title card. Love that title card. That might be up there with one of my favorite ones, because the shadow of the bat looks great. Great look of that. The long introduction to the Batmobile leaving the Batcave. Very, again, throwback to kind of the 60s Batman, where that was part of the episode every time. This is the only time that they showed that sequence in its entirety of the Batmobile leaving the Batcave. But it was cool with the music score under it. Just really looks great. So to wrap up, I appreciate this episode so much more now that I am older. And looking back on it for the historical element, I miss having some well-known villains in that, but I think that's the fan in me of the 1960s Batman that comes out in that, because Batman as a character is really showcased well in this, again, as a detective. And then we get the payoff of that final battle, which is really kind of cool to watch, instead of just Batman and ManBat punching it out, but flying through the city of Gotham is a very cool sequence. So that's a lot of fun to watch. So in ranking this beats out The Cat and the Claw, in my opinion, and jumps to the top of the list at the #1 slot for my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Thanks again for watching. I'm Andy Knode, and if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and also comment below and let me know what your thoughts of this episode were. If you think that this episode deserves to be in the #1 slot over the 2 episodes that we've done so far. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we talk about the first appearance of Mr. Freeze in Heart of Ice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.